Good morning, everybody, or at least when I'm recording this, it is morning. Not very early in the morning, at least. That's why you're going to have to deal with me clear my throat every now and then. I apologize in advance. Um, Today we're going to be reviewing The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. I did oops, and I covered it a little bit too much. Oh, well, wrong image, wrong image. Ooh, I'm bad at this. Let's see this one. Yeah. So today we're reviewing Jasmine's Throne by Tasha Suri. Let's get that decorative border back up here. Look how pretty and snazzy. Um, so this is another book where I borrowed the audiobook and it became one of my car listens, and dog walk listens. Um, it's another Sapphic fantasy genre set in a very Indian inspired um, setting where you get a lot of God, the way my brain wants to phrase it is women versus big empire. So the why am I forgetting character names again? This is I was just listening to the Oleander Throne, like not no more than 5 minutes ago, so you'd think I would remember these names. Let's do this. Let's Google some character names. So this is a story where Priya, our main character, our main POV character, uh, this does have revolving POV, and each chapter, as far as I recall, will tell you what character's POV you're in. You got Priya, um, Malini, Bhumika, Rao, and like one or two others. Like I can't remember the name of the husband of Bhumika. Like I can't for the life of me. Like every time his chapter comes up, I only remember because they say something, allude to something that goes, "Oh yeah, that's who he is." I can never remember his name. I'm bad. So basically, the synopsis is pretty straightforward. Um, so I'm gonna read the synopsis as a starter for once in one of these videos to give people an idea of the game. Author of Empire Sand and Realm of Ash, Tasha Suri's The Jasmine Throne, beginning a new trilogy set in a world inspired by the history and epics of India, in which a captive princess and a maidservant in possession of forbidden magic become unlikely allies on a dark journey to save their empire from the princess's traitor brother. So that's the first paragraph of the synopsis, and it kind of summarizes the whole plot very well. Chandra, the traitor brother, or the emperor to be. I don't remember if he's an emperor to be or if he's already emperor. I want to say Emperor Chandra. He is emperor already. Is very dictatorial. He's very sadistic. He enjoys what he does. To go into what he does would be a little spoilerly, but trigger warning, it does involve burning people for lack of subtlety. Um, and he has Malini imprisoned in the Hirana, which is pretty much an old temple of. Oh, why are the names eluding me? See, the names aren't like sticking in my brain, and I'm bad with names, so essentially the country is this country where the Harana is being subjugated by the Empire for past crimes. Again, I don't want to get into too many details. I don't know how far people expect things or consider things spoilers when I talk about the plot. And Priya, our main character for the most part, whose POV. We switch a lot between Malini and Priya's POV, but the primary character really feels like Priya because her plot seems to be the most significant one to the story, especially going into the second book. But we're not here to talk about the second book. Um, it is a queer slash sapphic romance. There is some flavors of a male romance that isn't confirmed or denied. as far as the first book is concerned. You do get hints of it. Kind of a will they, won't they, are they really a thing, are they not a thing type vibe of a parent. Um, which makes me a little sad because that means like they're not fleshing out a lot of the relationships of other characters. They're focusing mainly on Malini and Priya, which always makes me kind of sad in fantasy when they have a romantic subplot and they decide that not to branch into the other romances in the story a little bit to either confirm, deny, or flesh them out. Basically, like you kind of know it's kind of there, but you kind of don't, and it makes sense why. But going forward, like I'd like to see fantasy that handles like multiple ships a little bit more in balance, and this book doesn't really do that too well. But right now, the first book is very focused on Malini and Priya's relationship. The pacing is pretty slow for the first act or two. Like the first act and the second act. The first act didn't feel too slow. I felt like the second branch of the second arc was where like things kind of got a little too fast. Like it's like they spent so much time on setup that when they were finally getting into things they have to do, they were kind of going really quick. And then when we get to the third act, it's like bam, we finished, we concluded this plot line. We're gonna resolve it really fast, and it didn't feel convenient like some books do when they do it, but it didn't feel well paced or well worked into the overall book. Like I feel like my personal opinion is that the resolution should be woven throughout the whole book, so you kind of feel the pace of the book going from event to event to event in this sort of order that makes sense and feels well paced. So everything is eventually leading to the ending, and it's kind of peppered throughout the book, so you don't feel like you're spending a third of the book on setup, middle of the book rushing towards the third act, and then the third act happens, and you're like, oh, so all the resolutions have happened at the end of the second. Now we're going into the third, which is being treated like a climax or a big like build up to the climax chapter, and then so much stuff gets done so fast. Like, and this part will be spoilers. I'm sorry, but basically there's a aspect in the story that leans to its magical stuff, which is the power of the Yaksa and these temple children. And they basically go from talking about it a lot, kind of building it up, explaining the world, talking about it. Second act, I would argue, starts or ends around the second time this main character Priya goes through the Deathless Waters, and then you get steamrolled through the final arc of events, and they're going through the Deathless Waters for the third time in a race to get to them, and they get through them, and it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. And I mean, it's not lemon squeezy easy peasy, but it feels like it's handled really quickly in a way that like isn't well paced. Could I recommend this book? Maybe cautiously. Like I would have to say like the person has to be someone who's willing to read something or listen to something where they spend a lot of time in setup. AKA you're spending the first third or half of the book just listening to like world building stuff through the lens of the characters. And then eventually you'll get to the payoff sections where you start getting all your reveals and your action and your big things happening. Um, Things I really enjoyed about it, it's very refreshing. Like, I don't know, I really am biased towards powers of nature and like flowers and growth and I don't feel like there's a cycle of nature aspect to this. If anything, remembering how the Jasmine throne felt, it felt kind of like how nature cycle can be like go out of control through outside influence. and how that can become something to fear from other people. And you also get a lot of this aspect of empire and the subjugation of a group of people in the empire, and flavors of like stereotyping and looking down on them as a lesser because they're not uh the larger group or the empire themselves. um I do really like the concept of the nameless, not the nameless, the faceless. Is it faceless? No, faceless mothers, nameless god. The nameless god is one of the ones I really enjoy the characterization of in the lore. The nameless god is essentially this god without a name that a certain group or one of the nations worships them primarily. Like the character Rawl, is it from this nation? I wish I could remember the name. I feel so bad. Oh my god, not a nation. I don't know how many of them are nations, how many of them are territories, how many are, like, I don't. For all the explaining they do, I don't quite understand if certain things are countries or principalities or cities or tribes within this empire's under this empire's umbrella. I kind of want to assume they're like nation states or something to that. Maybe I missed something when I was listening to the audiobook and I don't remember it like 100%. And that's kind of a fault on my memory. So, um, I'm doing a blank thing again. Well, Rawl, basically, each children that kind of follow the nameless god are families within the nameless god sphere. They eventually go to this like ceremony or this procedure where where kind of like a baptism, I guess is what you could equate it to, where they're given a name in the nameless god, and this name is a prophecy, and that plays a really big thing into Rawl's character and the brother character Aditya. Uh, every time I mention them, I just sit here and I'm sad. They're such a well written duo when they are on screen, but the POV isn't really focused on uh Aditya and Raoul. It's focused on Malini and Priya. Like I said, they give a lot of the relationship screen time to Malini and Priya. Um, I think their romance is really refreshing because it's not perfect, it's flawed, but it's not flawed so much in a way where I feel like it's destructive and no, I don't want to say unhealthy because you could argue it's unhealthy. Um, it's flawed in a way where like it makes sense what's going on between the characters and their motivations and why it's not perfect. You're not reading about characters that just unrealistically fall together despite their problems, and looking at you all the romance stories ever where it's like what, why, no one would logically do what, like that, like you're not rooting for something, the relationship to go bad, because the relationship is actually really well paced and presented despite its flaws. It's a flawed relationship. It makes sense. It doesn't feel gratuitous in that flawed state or in a way that makes you uncomfortable to read the relationship. If anything, and you can feel like that this makes sense, versus being really unrealistic and over the top with it. I feel like they could have done a lot less. I don't think the first book needed to confirm how far the relationship would go right off the bat. I think they could have curbed it back a little bit, knowing this was a multiple book series. They could have gotten away with waiting until the second or third book to reveal like how far their relationship would go. Kind of, but I guess that's also like the nature of Jasmine Throne. Really feels like they want to conclude a plot arc in the book and leave very little left hanging, so you didn't get that feeling of being on a cliffhanger. Like obviously there is a cliffhanger-ish thing at the end of the book, but it's not gratuitous in the way where you're angry when you reach the end. You feel like a satisfying feeling at the end of the book. I'd give this book like I said, I do recommend with some hesitation because I know some people don't like reading a book that takes a while to do its setup. They don't like a book where like you're watching a lot of pieces be put in place and a lot of world build lore, and then suddenly plot. Well, there's always plot going on throughout the book. How do I put this? Like, there's plot going on, and you can see the building of the plot, but they spend too much time on explaining the world or building up the world along with the plot that you feel like you're spending more time with how world work and then how plot go. And that pacing just it loans to how the book's pacing is very, I don't want to say very not good, but not, and it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't not it's good, but it's not good in a sense that feels well balanced. It's not balanced. There we go. That's the words I'm looking for. Um Pacing's always a big thing with me. Like if I feel like the book is taking too long, it like always bugs me a little bit. It always will take the book down by like a half point. Um I want to say like Jasmine Throne in comparison to the last Sapphic read I covered, the Bookshops and Bone Dust and Legends and Lattes, does have a more grounded plot. Like it feels more realistic, the events that go on. The plot items don't feel so convenient except for like one that happens at the very end. Like you really feel like things are being well handled in a sense of like revealing stuff and finding solutions. And some of those solutions aren't perfect. They're rushed and they're human and they're erroneous. They're not these convenient items that just pop up to resolve whatever issue they're currently facing. And this is especially true going into the second book, which I'm in like the middle of listening to now. I borrowed the audiobook from Libby, and it's currently my new car slash dog walk. Listen, dude, I have like a 40-minute, depending on traffic, sometimes almost an hour drive from school and home. Audiobook saved me. The performance of the read is really good pronunciation, handling. God dang is the word needful stuck in my brain. Like, it gets used way too much. There's a lot of really repetitive word usage. That's something I remember from very distinctly noticing in the audiobook, listening to it. Um, I gave the book like a 4. It has a well-structured plot. The world building is really good. The lore building is good. I just think its pacing sets it back as well as like a not given screen time a little bit more to other aspects. Like I understand some of them didn't get a lot of screen time because you didn't want to reveal a lot of stuff going forward, especially when you get to the end of the book, you'll realize what I'm talking about. Certain characters, just too much time on the POV would be too much, basically. Um, some of my feelings might be coming from the Oleander sword too, but I'm trying to focus primarily on the Jasmine throne. Because Oleander sword so far doesn't seem to have a pacing issue. Doesn't seem to. Keywords. I think it has a lot better pacing. But we're talking about Jasmine throne here. This is definitely a 4 out of 5. The pacing and the multi POV without really giving equal time to other relationships and dynamics. Like, it really doesn't feel balanced in that respect. It feels 100% focused on Malini and Priya's romance and the fact they make sure it gets to a point where you're like, yeah, they will. By the end, like, they did. They didn't, they will. They did. The question becomes, will it survive the progression of these books? I do like the women take on Big Emperor energy. I'll talk about that a little bit more in Oleander Sword because there's a lot more present in Oleander Sword. In Jasmine Throne, you spend a lot more time kind of more about like how Emperor Chandra subjugates and treats women especially his sister and his sister's heart sisters and stuff like that. So yeah, that's it. 4 out of 5. Do recommend. Remember, the pacing is very slow at the beginning. When a pacing's kind of slow, I always recommend the audiobook over the print book because sometimes reading a slow book feels more arduous than just listening to it. Like I said, the audiobook performance is really good. That's how I've read this book. There's another book I want to review that's a Killian romance or a gay romance, and I'm reading the physical book after reading the audio, listening to the audiobook because performance good, content of book very crazy and hard to like grasp, and I think the audiobook made it more confusing. And that wasn't on the performance of the reader. It was more of a, I think, the concept of the book itself, which I will cover that book. I enjoyed that book, but fuck was I like confused the whole entire time, and I couldn't recommend it safely. Anyways, because now I'm digressing from the Jasmine Throne. I want to thank everybody for coming. Remember to subscribe. I'll do more book reviews. Always leave a comment, suggest like a book, suggest a book. You can contribute to the Ko-fi where you can request certain books. I always say if it's a book I wouldn't usually read, like I'm not a very big fan of het romance, and that's not on hetero romances. It's that, um, oh my god, are a lot of them not fun romances to read? Especially if the fantasy novel likes to like hyper focus on the relationship. Um, how do I put this? Um, yeah, Ko-fi, contribute, suggest books are there. Any contribution over any contribution with a book request will be considered more likely. First and foremost, get priority over just a comment down in the comment section of the YouTube video. Um, um, I'm always down for reading indie books. I like exploring indie novels, even though I know it can be kind of a slog. Because let's face it, book talk has turned publishing into this weird fast fashion style thing, and we're getting more books that are the same quality as something that would be independently published. The only difference is they had an editor to tell them to stop, and I don't know how much it helped. Anyways, bye. Love you guys. And remember, drink water, take care of yourself, and subscribe, hit that bell, and yeah, tell me what you'd like to hear about next. If not, I'll just keep randomly reviewing books I've read over the course of the last month or two. Bye, or listened to. Bye.